Hey there, everybody. This is a presentation called How Shape Defines Negative and Positive Space. And we'll also go into some instructions on how to do your next project. Shape in terms of art is a closed contour or a defined area. Here we have Vasily Kandinsky painting, Black and Violet is the title. And this is an artist that keeps coming up in our class. He has a lot of design elements throughout his abstracted works. And as you can see, there are shapes that are something that we can recall, like a triangle, that's very obvious, some rectangles, and also playing with a little bit of organic shapes, like maybe this sort of egg-like shape here. But yes, using the placements of shapes, and also when we get into color, you can see that there's some really interesting color theories in his work too, creating shapes like here in this, and then using yellow against the purple to finish off this squarish shape. Shape is two-dimensional, meaning there is length and width. The next few artists that we look at in this presentation are all living Black artists, American artists who work a lot with shape, and most artists tend to, I guess, most visual artists tend to, unless you're getting into the world of like more performance art. Anyways, Carrie James Marshall is a wonderful painter. He paints a lot of figures of Black people, Black bodies in the dark. He's always trying to portray them coming into the light, and there's always that the conversation that he creates about darkness and lightness with really just using very simple shapes in his work. His work is really flat. He uses mostly acrylic, and I really like this piece here because that's very dark values. There's all these really dark blues, and there is this obvious shape of this female figure, and a nice natural organic shape, in which there is a spotlight that is being casted down on her. And although we can understand the way a spotlight would work as a circle on a flat surface. The spotlight is casted, the circle is casted onto a surface with a shape and a contour. So this is a really cool contour that follows down the headboard, that follows over the wrinkled pillow, the wrinkled um, mattress, and over the blankets and up around again, and is looking more like an actual circle up here. So it's pretty cool, this abstraction of taking a circular shape and then abstracting it to fit, and understand how he's understanding how light hits these contours and objects as well. Although there are infinite shapes, there are certain ones that can be identified in these two categories. Geometric shapes, such as a square, star, hexagon, pentagon, things that we know within geometry. And this is an artist, Hank Willis Thomas, and this is a piece called Absolute Power. I thought this was this is a really good, just very simple shape in this image. And the overall meaning and the concept is quite heavy. This piece is about taking the Absolute Vodka campaign, which speaks to commodity and sellability, and he takes that campaign, as we know, as just a vodka bottle, and he looks at older illustrations of how African slaves were packed onto boats and creates this fluid um, concept between the commodity of African slaves and how they came to the United States to be sold and dispersed, and how that is very closely related to even the way we think about selling, commercially selling this vodka, absolute vodka, which is pretty much dominates other vodkas. It's like a very well known. So the concept is very heavy, and it is actually very quite sad. But one thing that I like about this piece, as far as our discussion on shape goes, is that it's very, very, very simple shape of a bottle, in which case all of these other shapes are inside of it. So I would call this probably an organic, or yeah, an organic shape, and within it more organic shapes, although it is recognizably a constructed bottle. So it's really, this is a powerful image. It's very, very simple, but it says quite a lot. So I thought that that could be good for you all to look at. Organic shapes are shapes that you would see in nature, or shapes that are abstracted. Kara Walker is a really great person, I think, to look at, and how she contorts and expands shapes. She's a living artist. She became pretty well known for these silhouette cutouts on black paper that she would do, and she would put them on big walls, sort of like to be viewed as a mural. And her work is it, it's about the South, the visions of the South. I think I talk about her quite a lot in this design class, because I think she has a really strong background in drawing. She's a wonderful designer. Um, she she looks at a lot of like older imagery, and she recontextualizes them into her own dark landscape of what the antebellum South looked like. And it's all organic shapes, but she really, there's such a beautiful gesture, and in the simplicity of like this like skirt, for example. The Also like how the small intricacies of like the smaller shapes that she has next to the larger shapes that she has makes this all really dynamic. So she's always playing a lot with scale. um like this little guy here and like this little guy here, and they're all, they're all doing like very like violent things. And but it's something I always think about, how her work exists in silhouettes as opposed to like full color. And I think that it would be really hard to see this imagery in full color, but her just compressing it down into a black and white creates a narrative that is ultimately pretty sad, but a little bit easier, I suppose, to understand the story and the narrative that she's trying to say, because she has it down to boil down to these specific silhouettes and specific shapes um, that are telling a greater story, as I said before. So shapes defined by objects are positive shapes or spaces, and shapes defined around objects are negative shapes. So to show you a bit more about what that means. So we're going to look at this a little up close of Kara Walker. It's called Keys to the Coop. And so here in this image, all of the black shapes are the positive space within the image, and all of the white shapes or surrounding whiteness is the negative space within the image. So what's really cool to like break down when you're looking at Kara Walker's work, you see there's like the positive space are these shapes, but the negative space is so important in defining the positive space as well. And I find that the negative space it has is a very interesting shape. So this area here is just as refined and interesting and dynamic as the figure of the girl and the figure of the chicken. So that's always something to keep in mind. Like even the way like this feather kind of cuts in this direction towards her waistline, like it's very, very intelligent design to be so considerate of not just the positive space, but your figures, but also the negative space. And even like like that small hint of where the shirt touches her armpit, and also like these little slivers right here, like it's what's the saying? The devil's in the details. So, no, seeing that these considerations for using negative space to just enhance the figures, the positive space shapes a little bit more is a simple tool that you can apply to your designs. The relationships that exist between positive and negative shapes help the brain of our audience understand what they're seeing as well as understand the complexities of our work. So we're going to talk a little bit about placement because you saw hopefully the composition presentation before. And so this kind of goes within composition, or the way that shapes relate to each other, or how even it's important to consider where you place your shapes on the page. So we're going to look at a simple dot on a white piece of paper. So why is this spot or dot static or lacking in movement, action, or change, especially in a way that is undesirable and uninteresting? Um, I know that I don't have a classroom sitting in front of me, but I'll answer for you. The reason that this is so static is because it is placed right in the middle. So there's nothing, there's no action happening. There's no other shape that it's speaking to. It's not placed in the corner over here with all this space over here. Um, so the positive space exists solely in the middle. The negative space frames it very symmetrically, very evenly, and in that way, our eye just focuses on the dot. Now, this might be considered undesirable or uninteresting, this static placement of this dot on this white space, but I don't think it's necessarily uninteresting when you are using this composition to make a statement. So like going back to this piece by Hank Willis Thomas, it's a very central focus composition. It exists right in the middle of the page that it is on, or the paper that it is on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's more uninteresting, but it means that it is static, it is not moving. I'm just supposed to be focusing really on this image here, and there's nothing else surrounding the image that I need to think about. And that's the power of the artist understanding, centralizing my focus so that the message becomes even stronger. So next example of a simple spot on a page is a spot floating or falling. So you ask yourself that question, the answer is falling, and that is because it is a spot that is located on the bottom third of a page. When I made my composition presentation, I'm pretty sure I mentioned how the rule of thirds in composition. So there's 1, 2, and then 3. Cutting up the image into thirds can help you use your artistic genius to get people to have a sensation when they look at your work. So, I mean, if you flipped this image completely upside down, you would instead have the feeling that it is floating because of all of the negative space would be below it, as opposed to in this image here, all the negative space is above it. Now that there are 2 spots, there becomes a relationship. Which spot do you focus on more and why? So the answer to that is, or I don't know what spot you focus on more, but the correct answer is this spot here. So now that there's 2 spots, we can simply ask a question like we can see that one is a little bit bigger, one's a little bit smaller. There is a relationship that evolves. And we focus on this one more because of the negative space that surrounds this. So it's really important to think about the way your piece um, approaches the end of your paper. So this edge here, this edge of this piece of paper or canvas or whatever two-dimensional surface you're working on, this small relationship, this negative space here and this negative space here and this negative space here becomes a little bit more dynamic than this one dot that remains a little bit static. This one has um, a pretty even and plentiful amount of negative space that surrounds it, but then this one has a more dynamic negative space that surrounds it, such as this little area right here, this area right here, this length that goes here and here. So you can use the edge of your surface to draw the viewer's eye into whatever part of your piece of paper or drawing or painting that you want. So now we think of this image as an atmosphere. Which spot is closer and why? So the answer being the big spot obviously feels closer because now that you in the perspective presentation, although you're doing 1, 2, 3 point perspective, you also learned a bit about atmosphere perspective within atmosphere. So anything that is closer to you is bigger and maybe you can see more details of it. And then anything that is farther away will be smaller and with less details and actually darker, more neutral um, colors. So we're not in colors right now, but you will understand that in the future. So this is an overview of the space and shape assignment that you have coming up. It's focusing on negative and positive space. So for your assignment, you'll need Bristol paper, tracing paper, pencil, marker, and eraser. And you're going to need to invent your own interesting shape, or I actually did upload a few shapes from this book that I found if you need inspiration for shapes that are pretty interesting. And it needs to have, like, I don't want anyone to do a geometric shape. I don't choose a circle. It just won't be as interesting. You have to choose something that is interesting, which is a part of even being an artist is like knowing that when something intrigues you and when you find something interesting, jot that down, take note of that, and you can kind of relish on or think about like why that thing is interesting. So yeah, make sure you choose an interesting shape to begin with. So for the first drawing, you are going to create 8 identical shapes at odd intervals, not on graph paper, just disregard that. You're going to create 8 identical shapes at odd intervals on your Bristol paper with the shapes going in the same direction. This is going to be a little exploration of pattern. So it's good. They're all see this spiky, all the spikes in this example and the flat bottom, they're all facing the same direction, but they're placed at different intervals on the paper. So you're gonna use your tracing paper, and I have a video on how to use tracing paper. This will make this first drawing and the second drawing very easy. So you can just retrace that same shape over and over again. You're gonna explore pattern. Be aware of where you're placing your shape on your page. Look at how close this is to the edge. Look at how close this shape is to this shape is. And then also notice how this shape has a lot of space in between it. They're also set up even in the sense of like at similar intervals. So see how this is like stacked 1, 2, 3. This is stacked up like this. This one's placed next to it, and then it kind of breaks off. So have fun exploring pattern. Consider the negative space in between your shape that you repeat 8 times. Your second drawing, you're going to create 8 identical shapes that show a change of direction. So you can do this toppling, you can do this in like very evenly, it can be symmetrical, it can be rotated, it can be look messy, or not messy, but maybe you can play with the movement of it. So this You're going to have your tracing paper, hopefully make this easy for yourself. And you're going to draw your shape 8 times, fill it in, mark, and demonstrate an understanding of direction using this one shape. The third drawing, you don't need your tracing paper anymore. You're just going to have to use your drawing skills for this one. You're going to create a drawing that has 8 variations of size with the same shape. So you want to keep it in the same direction. Don't forget that. You want to, these points are all facing upward. So, and then all the flat parts are facing downward. You want that to be in the same direction, but you're just going to be playing with size and scale. Um, yeah, so they're all relatively the same, just different scale. Pretty straightforward. So just play around with size. And then your fourth drawing, this should be the most dynamic one. You will have 8 different shapes inspired from your original shape, and you're going to think of changing up the length and width. And please be creative, really push the boundaries within this one here. I mean, as you can see, like the original shape was this. Then it goes to this. It's really short and stout, long and wide, and flipped over to the side. So it's changing direction. There's still some pattern there. It's changing size, but the length and width and diagonals of the shape are being pulled and pushed and explored. And that's what I want you to do. Explore negative and positive space. And also definitely always consider the way that the negative space exists between your shapes. And then here is an example of a strong student work from last semester. They did it on graph paper, but I want you to do this on Bristol paper. And so the student decided to do the shape like more than 8 times, which is great. I love when people go above and beyond. It's always fun for me to see people having fun. So his shape was pretty, really interesting to begin with. There is a sort of a negative space that is happening here. The shape gets really thin as opposed to its width. It's already very dynamic to begin with. And then this is it changing direction. So the artist is placing the shape sort of within the negative shapes here. Like I love the way that it's like this topically rotating feeling, and then also using all of that negative space to show me that this understanding of understanding placement on the paper, and how negative space can be used to create an image that can be very powerful, and having these two down here. So I thought this was a really great example. The next one he did is a variation of size, and I love this study of like of the shape on a macrocosmic level as opposed to like a microcosmic level. He's using the edge of the paper to show me how big he could push the size of that shape. So I feel like I'm standing into it. I'm looking into this peephole, and then getting really, really small and pushing the scale is really nice. Very nice design. And then the last one he did, the exploration of negative and positive space. He took that shape, and then he just really pushed and pulled and abstracted and just morphed the shape into being super dynamic every time he had a chance to explore it. Um, just remembering size, the pattern, direction, and then pushing the length and width, the diagonals. And then what I thought was really nice about this one too is that he had even more ideas for how he could change his shape, but he just implemented it with just a simple line drawing. He didn't have to do that, but it was cool that he was so creative and imaginative to have even more abstractions of the original shape, which he just placed in this negative space. So that is your assignment. Good luck. Watch the tracing paper video. It's a quick video, just a little demo, and please email with any questions. All right, thank you.